Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of The Message. I am your host, Donatus King. We'll spend this next hour with one purpose in mind, and that one purpose is delivering the message that God is Almighty. Everything that ever was, is now, ever will be, was made by God. Everything that ever happened, is happening right now, or ever will happen, was made to happen by God. God is a master plan for all time and all creation. God is Almighty. The message is brought to you by, is produced by the Society of Knowledge Incorporated. The Society is an interdenominational, religious, spiritual organization. Our members come from various different religious and spiritual backgrounds. We have various different religious and spiritual beliefs. Although we come from different backgrounds and have different beliefs, there's one belief that we share. There's one piece of knowledge that we hold in common, and that's the knowledge that there is a being. By no matter what name we may have been taught to call that being, by no matter what name we may have come to know that being, whether that name be God, Allah, Yahweh, Jesus, Jehovah, Buddha, nature, by no matter what name, we know that there is a being that possesses not some of the power, not most of the power, but all of the power. We know that there is indeed an almighty being. That's the reason we do this show, and the only reason we do this show, to deliver the message that that being that personally I call God, that being is indeed almighty. I want to thank Brother John and Dane for joining us on Facebook. Those of you that are watching by TV, I invite you to join this discussion. And today is November the 1st. 2018. That's right, the first Thursday, the first show of the month. And I remind that fact because tonight, as we are on most Thursdays, we are live. And I remind you of that fact because this show is an open discussion. It's a two-way conversation. For those of you that are watching on television, you see the telephone number that's on your screen, and that's 504-483-3336. I invite you to use that number, call in, and join the discussion. For those of you that are watching by Facebook, Brother John, Brother Dane, post your comments, join the discussion. If there's something that's going on in church, your mosque, your synagogue, your masjid, your temple, your place of worship, and you want to let the world know about it, call in and let the world know about it. Post your comment on Facebook and let the world know about it. If there's something that's going on in your nonprofit organization and you want to let the world know about it, call in or post your comment on Facebook. More important than what's going on in your place of worship, more important than what's going on in your nonprofit, if there's something that God has done for you in your life, a miracle that God has worked in your life. And I use that word literally, a miracle, because the God that I'm here to tell you about is working miracles here in the year 2018. The God I'm here to tell you about is working miracles today, November 1st, 2018. Maybe God worked a miracle in your life. You know, there was a news segment I watched on my way right before coming to the studio this evening. And that news segment was talking about Alzheimer's and about how many people are being affected by Alzheimer's. Not only the people that are contracting the illness, but their caregivers are being impacted by having a loved one or relative contract Alzheimer's. It may be some period in your life whereas your memory was leaving. It may be a period in your life where you had begun to get a little bit fuzzy. I'm here to tell you that we see TV all day long and they're prescribing this kind of medicine, that kind of medicine to help folks that are having those problems. I'm here to tell you that if all that medicine fails, God can work a miracle, and God is working miracles here in the year 2018. I understand we have a caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Good evening. How you doing, sis?
I'm doing fine.
Good. Do you have some testimony this evening?
Well, I have many testimonies, but my question is, how can you distinguish miracles with destiny? Because from my understanding that your life have already been planned and you will reach that destination regardless of what what the doctor says or who says what.
Right.
So
That's outstanding question, sister. And I agree with you. As you see at the beginning of the show, I state that God is almighty and God has a master plan. So God does indeed have our lives planned out. Now, when I speak about miracle and God making miracles, working miracles, miracles happen every day, every second of the day. And when I talk about a miracle, I'm talking about something that cannot be explained. It cannot be explained by science. It cannot be explained using any logic. It cannot be explained in any kind of way. Like folks that have sicknesses, illnesses, and they've tried all types of therapies, tried all types of surgery, tried all types of everything, and nothing works. And for some reason, their body is cured. Folks that have been diagnosed with cancer, and for some reason, they go to the doctor and find out that there isn't not a one cancerous cell in their body. A miracle, something that can't be explained, something that there's no logical explanation for. That's what I'm speaking about when I say a miracle. And sometimes when we think about miracles, we think that it has to be something with a bolt of lightning or a clap of thunder. But let me take and just put things to you in a different little way. There have been instances where folks have been scheduled to take airplane trips. And for some reason, at the last second, while they're on their way to the airport, something happens and they don't get on that plane. And that plane just happens to have an accident. Now, whatever that incident that occurred, whatever that incident was that kept them from getting on that airplane, that's a miracle. God uses you, me, everything around us, uses all of creation to work out his plan. So when I speak of miracles, it's something that can't be explained logically, scientifically, or any other kind of way. But the reality of it is, the bottom line is, that was part of God's plan all along. All right, you still.
And you're so true, and that's very correct. You're so true, and that's correct. But I need you to explain when people say choices. Oh, they made that choice. But even though you made a choice to do something, it's still going to be what God says. If you decide to go one way and you're supposed to be another destination by God's will, you're going to be there. But some people say they made a choice to do something bad, and that's why this happened to them.
Right, sister, that's,
They have to realize they don't control the universe.
Yeah, what you're saying now, and that's an issue that a lot of religions, a lot of churches have grappled with, and there's actually a term that they use now, and that's the free will, as to whether or not man does control his own destiny. And if you believe that
they do?
Oh, sister, I tell you, as I say at the beginning of every program, that God has a master plan for all time and creation. So every step that I make is already ordained by God. Every decision that I make is already ordained by God. I can't go left if God wants me to go right. Yes, sister.
So why are people are saying, I think this has to be explained in the church, because people just don't understand. They say, oh, they went to jail because they made a bad decision. That was their choice. I just think that was their destiny to go there for whatever reason. It had to happen. It was the will of God. That's how they If they went to jail, they stayed 10 years, that's what was supposed to happen.
Right. Yeah, you know, that's interesting that you choose that example. And I say it's interesting because we've spoken at length on this program about someone that went to jail. They had false charges brought against him. He went to jail, but that was his destiny. It was part of God's plan that he go to jail. And that person that we read about and we discussed, we talked about, that was Joseph. And it was Joseph's destiny that he go to jail so that he'd be put in a position that he would meet Pharaoh. And because Joseph met Pharaoh, he was able to save and provide for his people, the Jewish people. So it's hard to accept that there is an almighty being. For some folks, it's hard to accept. But my knowledge is that, yes, there is indeed an almighty being. Not a being that controls some things, but a being that controls all things.
Well, why it's so hard for Christian people who've been in the church all their lives, and I speak to them all the time, they say that, oh, they made a choice to do something wrong, and that's why they went there. Why they can't understand this was the will of God?
Right.
What is so hard for a person to understand it was the will of God?
Right. Well, Brother Derek, Brother Marcellus, thank you for joining us on Facebook. Join in this discussion, and we're talking about free will right now and choice. And sister, this is what I've been saying for the past 10 minutes about God having a master plan. If it was God's will, that everyone had the same belief, that everyone had the same knowledge, if it was God's will that everyone acknowledged that it's in God's hands, then it would be so. So my direct answer to your question is that this is the way that God has it planned. This is the way that, now, why God has it planned like that, I can't answer that. What I can answer is that it is part of God's plan. And it brings me back to some scriptures where the Bible in the book of Genesis, it speaks about all men being of one tongue and understanding each other and working together, and started to make such progress that it came to a point where God said, look, you all are moving too fast and I got to slow you down. So I'm going to confuse your tongues so that you don't understand each other, so that your progress will be halted. And that's the scriptures that speak about the Tower of Babel. So as it stands right now, where we do have different religions preaching and teaching different things, we do have different people having different types of understanding and believing different things. If it was God's will that everybody thought the same thing, understood the same thing, it would be so. But that's not where we are right now. Thank you, sister. I really appreciate. And sister, if you could, if you're still there, if you could just your first name, that'd be great.
My name is Jerry, and I've been on your show before.
All right.
From the Me and You.
All right, Sister Jerry, thank you for calling in, and I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate the questions. And the questions, believe me, the questions that you're asking are questions that have been asked all the way going back to what we read about in the Bible. You know, because we had, and we're going to talk about this come the spring, around Easter time, we even had Jesus Christ questioning why he had to go through different things. But at the end, he acknowledged and he submitted his own will to the will of his Father, said, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Thank you for calling in and participating in the discussion, Sister Jerry. All right. This viewers, Facebook viewers, TV viewers, join in. Let the Spirit move you. We have announcement, testimonies. After that, we will go into religious spiritual study. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good, coming out of 1 Book of Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. We will continue with our discussion about the history of Christianity. We'll be at part 3. Some of the issues, some of the questions that Sister Jerry brought up a few minutes ago, we saw those same questions debated during the development and the formation of the religion that we now call Christianity. Because there were some Christians in the early church, that really did not believe in the concept of free will. There were some Christians in the early church that did not believe in the concept of there being a Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. There were some Christians in the early church that did not believe in the books that are currently compiled into what we call the New Testament. There are some Christians in the early church that believed that there were other books just as holy, just as sacred as the ones that are now in the canonized version of the New Testament. So that's all part of the church history, and we're going to continue. We'll have part 3 of that study tonight. Our words of inspiration, if we get to it, it'll come out of the book of Exodus, chapter 2, verses 16 through 25. And if we get past that, we'll be in chapter 3, verses 1 through 16. That's our main website that you see up there now, www.godisalmighty.org. I invite you to log that website into your web browser 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can visit that website, and there are links to all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I was speaking with Evangelist Paul just a few minutes ago before we came on the air, and there's videos that we have going back, more than a year on YouTube. So if you go to our YouTube page, matter of fact, just go to our main website. Go to our main website, www.godisalmighty.org, and you go to there's a link there to our YouTube page. And while I'm speaking about it, any of you all that have a ministry, if it's a church or if it's a ministry that's not confined to the four corners of a building, if you have a ministry and you would like to have video of your ministry aired on the message, give me a call and we'll make some arrangements that we'll be able to air your video here on the program. And we're also working towards having different ministries air on the web page at various times. So if you have a ministry, Church Without Walls, you have a ministry and you want to have your service aired on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock, we can do that. We can have that aired on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock, every Wednesday, 8 o'clock. So that's where we're going. As we say, we're interdenominational. Okay? Interdenominational. There are different people that are saying the same thing, but using different words. People saying the same thing, but using different languages. So if you're Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, no matter what your faith, if you want to have your services broadcast, give us a call, and we'll make that happen. All right, moving on with our announcements. Rock of Ages Ministries International, Apostle Ronnie Bailey. Yeah, that's his main website, or that's their main website, I should say, www.ronniebailey.com. New Orleans Peacekeepers, 504-500-1706. And I want to emphasize the Peacekeepers. They're an organization, they're a group of people that go out in the community and try to help folks talk out, work out without any violence, try to help them resolve any disputes, problems, beefs they may be having without resorting to violence. So if you know someone that's having some disputes out there in the community, and that's in the New Orleans area, call 500-1706. And that's Minister William Muhammad that's leading that effort. You don't have to be Muslim or a member of the Nation of Islam to participate. They work with all different types of people. Call 311 between hours of 8:30 and 4:30 p.m. for free smoke detectors in the New Orleans area. Check your car's back seats for babies. The Tricentennial Soul, Xavier University Center, McCaffrey Ballroom, 3rd floor, featuring a Deacon John Moore, Dr. Michael White, Oprah Creole, Cynthia Greatley, Don Vappy, and the Hot Ace Brass Band. That's free, some free music. You can't beat that. Good music. This coming Sunday, November the 4th, 2018, at 3 p.m., and that's at Xavier University Center, and it's hosted and sponsored by Dr. Michael White. All right. Brother Marion, thank you for joining us. Sister Candace, thank you for joining us on Facebook. Vote this coming Tuesday. This coming Tuesday, vote. November the 6th, vote. It's important that you get out and vote. I early voted. That's how important it is. I have already voted. Early voting is closed, but November 6th, you have an opportunity to get out and vote. Testimonies. Tonight, during our testimonies, we have a piece that we're going to show, and it's a video clip. This past week, we were out in the city of Lafayette, Louisiana, and we had the pleasure of being an eyewitness to history. We're studying in our religious discussion, our religious study session, we're studying the history of Christianity, the development and formation of Christianity. Well, there's a religion that's developing. It was started about 29 years ago. Next year will be their 30th anniversary. And that religion is called the African American Catholic Congregation. We've talked about them here on the program before. We've aired various videos. But this past weekend, the African American Catholic Congregation consecrated, ordained a new bishop. And that bishop is actually a friend of mine, a friend of the family, and that is His Excellency, Bishop John W. Milton, Bishop over the Lafayette province of the African American Catholic Congregation. And we had the pleasure of being present at his ordination, and we're going to roll a video of that now. And again, the ordination of His Excellency, the Most Reverend John W. Milton, African American Catholic Congregation, Lafayette, Louisiana province.
And we will experience the love of God in a way that we seldom experience it. When we raise up one of our own, from our own kith and kin, to be a shepherd of God's people. Let us seal ourselves with the sign of the cross as we say together, I am one with God. I am one with God. Hotep, namaste. God in me greets the God in you. The God in me celebrates the presence of the God in you. The God in me acknowledges, reverences, and worships the God in you.
Archbishop Augustus G. Stallings of the African American Catholic Congregation and the newly ordained Bishop of the Lafayette Province, Bishop John W. Milton. Okay. Archbishop.
Peace be with you. I wanted to share with the viewing audience the great news and the excitement of the ordination and consecration of John Wayne Milton as the new presiding bishop of the Lafayette province of the African American Catholic Congregation, and also to signal that his selection, appointment, and ordination as bishop is a sign of the tremendous growth and the development of the African American Catholic congregation at Imani Temple in Louisiana. His role as the presiding bishop is not only to pastor our local church, Imani Temple number 49 in Lafayette, but to oversee the growth and development of all of our Imani temples in the southern region of the United States. So we ask for your continued support and prayers that Bishop John Wayne Milton will not only be successful in his ministry, but also will be a sign to our country, and particularly the southern region, that we have a man of God who is committed to service and to the liberation of our people here in Louisiana and around the world.
All right. And Bishop?
First of all, relying upon God's grace, mercy, and providence, and the confidence of our Archbishop and founder. I accept this responsibility, this what I call a welcome burden, that I know that I will not have to share alone. I look forward to all those who are willing to work with us here in the Lafayette province, for we know the situations, we know the sin-sick world that we live in, and therefore we know the struggles of our day. And I'm looking forward to laying the proper foundation that we might attack these issues and problems sociologically, psychologically, economically, educationally, culturally, physiologically, in all aspects of life. Holistically, we shall bring something to Lafayette and continue to bring to Lafayette what it is that God has put upon the African American Catholic congregation. But I'm most excited about the theology that has been developed and being developed in the African American Catholic congregation, the I am theology, which I believe is the best solution to the issues affecting the issues of violence in our community, the issue of oppression and suppression in our community. We must be the prophetic church that God has called us to be, and I'm very, very excited about that. Again, by laying a proper foundation, we must, in our nation-building process, not only seek to reach full spiritual maturity in and of itself, but to know that we can never reach full spiritual maturity without being mature in all other aspects of life. So the teachings that we have received, the guidance that we have received, the leadership has readied us for the task, and I feel confident that we will be victorious with God's help.
Bishop, I know personally that you're a man of vision, and as a testament to that vision, I'm panning up now, and we can see that we're standing in front of the Harambe Center that is opened here Event Center that's opened here in the city of Lafayette. And that opening is a result of a lot of hard work and as a result of the vision that you had for Imani number 49.
Yes, sir.
And I know it's only been one day since you have been installed as the bishop of the Lafayette province, but is there part of the vision for Lafayette province that you can share with us?
Absolutely. As we know, the word Harambe utilized in the great African American holiday called Kwanzaa. It means to pull together. And one thing that our community in the greater Lafayette area needs is to pull together. This community and community all over America is too separated and divided. And as our Archbishop preached in church this morning about division. But it's about the vision rather than division. And this center will be used to pull this community together. We might sit and bring our elders in to receive a good word from them, strength and inspiration. And yet we might pull our young people in who need the guidance and the safeguards, the sanctuary that so much is lacking in our community. So we're looking forward to the great work we have here.
Archbishop, thank you. Bishop, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
And we're broadcasting, we're live today.
God is almighty.
Almighty. All right, thank you.
All right. As the bishop closed out and said that indeed God is almighty. So they're doing some great work out there in the city of Lafayette. Throughout the country, the African American Catholic congregation is doing some great work, and we applaud the work that they're doing, and anything that I personally can do to help them, I am going to do that. All right. Religious spiritual study. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Coming out of the first book of Thessalonians, chapter 5, verse 21. As always, anything that you hear me say on this program, anything that you hear any of our guests say, anybody that calls in, don't take it to be true. Prove it yourself. And if you find out that it's true, then hold on to it. If it's not, let it go. And if you hear me say something on this show that's not true, call in or post a comment on Facebook and let me know, because I don't want to be out here putting any bad information out here. Okay? I don't want to do that. So if I say something that's not right, call and let me know. Sister Tamiko, thank you for joining in on Facebook. And let's get right into our discussion. The history of Christianity, part 3. Okay, last week we talked about Melchizedek, a very, very important figure in the history of Christianity. And that goes all the way back, way before Jesus Christ. Yes, Christianity was not a religion that just started up out of nowhere. When we do our studying, we find out that there were precursors to Christianity. We find out that there were actually roots of Christianity. Christianity was rooted in, grew out of something that existed before. And I'm not speaking about just Judaism. I'm speaking about something even predating Judaism, going back to before the days of Abraham. All right? And that person that we studied about, his name is in the Bible, Melchizedek, the king of Salem. Someone who was so holy, they say he was the priest of the Most High God. He was so holy that Abraham paid tithes to him. He was so holy that Jesus Christ was named, was denominated to have studied in the order of, to be likened unto Melchizedek. So those are the roots of Christianity. Christianity was not something new. As a matter of fact, the disciples, Jesus Christ's disciples, were not called Christians until at least 30 years after Christ's death. Jesus Christ did not call his followers Christians. He did not call his disciples Christians. And if you look in the book of Acts, and I'm going to pull this, I like to be factual when I talk. In the book of Acts, chapter 11, verse 26. Acts chapter 11, verse 26, and it reads, Acts chapter 11, verse 26. And when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people. Now listen to this right here. And the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. The disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. This is at least 30 years after Jesus' death. But the message that the disciples were bringing, the message that Christ brought, was no new message. It wasn't anything new. Remember, Jesus Christ was baptized. And it was not until he was baptized until his ministry began. It was when he was baptized that the Holy Ghost descended on him. It was when he was baptized, and that baptism that Jesus Christ went through was part of an organized movement. Jesus Christ was baptized by his cousin, John the Baptist. John the Baptist had disciples. And the scriptures tell us that after Jesus was baptized, that John gave Jesus some of his own disciples. Christianity was not something altogether new, out of the blue. And when we read the scriptures, when we do our studying, we find out that it stretches all the way back to Melchizedek, to the time of Abraham. We find that it stretches even before Melchizedek. And when we do our studying, when we get to the point that we're studying not in a book, when we're studying not with someone telling us something, when it gets to the point that we're studying what God Almighty is bringing to us, we find out that that message goes all the way back to when it was only one, all the way back to God Almighty. That message that's been around throughout all eternity. All eternity. That message of oneness, of unity, that we're all part of the one. All right, let's go now. We're going to try to stay on task. Try to stay with our lesson plan here. Brother Troy, thank you for joining on Facebook, Brother Troy. Roots of Christianity. So we've read and we studied a couple of weeks ago about the Old and New Testament. We studied about Josephus. We studied about Melchizedek. Tonight, we might be able to get into the Essenes, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Gnostics, and the Nag Hammadi Library. The Essenes were a sect of Second Temple Judaism which flourished from the 2nd century BCE, before Christian era, to the 1st century Christian era. The Jewish historian Josephus records that Essenes existed in large numbers and thousands lived throughout Roman Judea, but they were fewer in number than the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the other two major sects at the time. The Essenes lived in various cities, but congregated in communal life dedicated to voluntary poverty, daily immersion, and asceticism. Those were the Essenes. Now, what that says, and let's get some understanding, okay? Because some of us may not be aware of that. What that's saying is that when we read in the Bible, in the New Testament, we see a lot of discussion about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, okay? Two groups of the Jewish people, the two major groups of the Jewish people, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Okay? In the Bible, we don't read anything about the Essenes. They don't use that term in the New Testament. But what it tells us in the Bible is that you had the Jews, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees, but then the Bible also tells us about these other folks that were neither Pharisees nor Sadducees, because the Bible tells us, I was just talking about it, it tells us about this group of people that lived in poverty that were ascetics. And that means that they lived like monks. They weren't worried about earthly things and worldly things. They were focused on spirituality. And who is it that we read about in the Bible that did that? One preaching in the wilderness. Oh, John the Baptist. And who was John the Baptist? Jesus' cousin. Where did Jesus go to get baptized? He didn't go to the temple to get baptized. He went to John the Baptist. So John the Baptist was not operating by himself. The scripture tells us that he had disciples. It was an organized movement with John the Baptist. And what did they have? They had baptism, immersion. Who does that sound like? Sounds like the Essenes. Josephus. Josephus was a historian. Okay? He wasn't someone that's just writing Jewish history or writing about any religion. He is a historian. He writes about the Essenes. He uses that name, the Essenes. He describes who they are. He describes what they do. When we read about Jesus Christ and that group that he was with, they believed in communal living. They believed in sharing as one. They believed in baptism. Another word, Essenes. Do your own studying. Prove all things. Hold fast that which is good. And here we see on the map now, it says where the Essenes lived. And this area we see all around here in Judea, as you see the pointer going around in Judea, and as you see right here, this area right here, this blue area at the bottom of your screen where you see the pointer, that's the Dead Sea. And at the top of the Dead Sea, right up here in the northwest corner of the Dead Sea, we see Qumran. Okay? Qumran. You know, when we talk about and read about things, it's good to put maps up so folks can get kind of an idea of what we're talking about. The Essenes have gained fame in modern times as a result of the discovery of an extensive group of religious documents known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are commonly believed to be the Essenes library. These documents preserve multiple copies of parts of the Hebrew Bible. Understand what it's saying now? Parts of the Hebrew Bible untouched from possibly as early as 300 BCE until their discovery in 1946. 300 BCE, 300 before the era of Christ. So these are works, these are writings 300 years before Christ walked on the earth. The Essenes were around 300 years before Christ walked on earth. But I'm here to tell you something. When you read through those Dead Sea Scrolls, it's a whole lot of stuff up in there make you think you reading the New Testament. Make you think that the people they're writing about up in there make you think that that's Jesus Christ. There's a figure in the Qumran scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, called the teacher of righteousness. When you read through there, you might get to scratching your head and saying, what, are they talking about Jesus? When you get to reading about their beliefs and their rituals and their practices, you start to thinking, what is this? They're talking about the Christian church. But this existed 300 years before Jesus Christ. Okay? The history of Christianity. And what you see on the screen right now, you see that rolled up there, those are the scrolls. And what you see, that object that's standing up, that's the jars that they found them in. And it's a fascinating story when you read about that. And they were found in the caves of Qumran. And you saw on the map where Qumran is. And this is the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I invite you, I encourage you to do your homework. Apostle Bailey, thank you for joining us on Facebook. Sister Sandra, thank you for joining us on Facebook. And as we discuss the Dead Sea Scrolls and the importance to Christianity. And the first reference to the sect is by the Roman writer Pliny the Elder, who died around the year 79, Christian era, in his natural history. And again, these are history books. We just read about Josephus. Now we're reading about Pliny the Elder. And Pliny is talking about the Essenes. He's not saying anything about Christians. He's talking about the Essenes. But when you read what Pliny wrote about, you would think that he's talking about the Christians. It says that Pliny relates in a few lines that the Essenes possessed no money, had existed for thousands of generations, not thousands of years, thousands of generations. What did I talk about going on even before Melchizedek? And that their priestly class, contemplatives, do not marry. Sounds kind of like some sects of Christians now, don't marry. Unlike Philo, who did not mention any particular geographical location of the Essenes other than the whole land of Israel, Pliny places them somewhere above En-Gedi, next to the Dead Sea. And that's where we talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that's the Essenes, all a part of the history of Christianity, the Gnostics. Now look at this. This is some more in the development of Christianity. Gnosticism is a modern name for a variety of ancient religious ideas and systems originating in Jewish Christian milieus in the 1st and 2nd century AD. Okay? Jewish and Christian milieus. Okay? Jewish and Christian environment. Okay? These systems believe that the material world is created by an emanation of the highest God, trapping the divine spark within the human body. This divine spark could be liberated by gnosis. And the word gnosis actually means knowledge. Okay? Now, doesn't that sound kind of like what the Bible talks about this divine spark being in the human body? Doesn't the book of Genesis talk about God creating man from the mud, and man did not become a living soul until God breathed into it? Doesn't the Bible say about that? Doesn't that sound like what the Gnostics believed in? That this shell contains a divine spark? Now, when you study a little bit more about the Gnostics, their teachings, their beliefs was that this creator that created everything, all the humans, all the animals, that created was what they call a demiurge, a lesser God. That there was a God above the demiurge, and that God did not create all these material things that we see. That God was on a higher plane than the demiurge. So I invite you to do your homework on that. And some scholars, some theologians have equated that idea to the idea of God using angels to create the physical bodies that we see. Some scholars, some theologians have studied and said that they have equated that, explained that that's what the Bible is talking about in the book of Genesis when God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So a whole lot of preachers have struggled with that, explaining, well, who's God talking to when he said, let us make man in our image? Who is God talking to? Yeah. So again, that development of that idea and the similarities between what's in the Old Testament, the basis in the Old Testament is the basis for the New Testament. So that idea that's in the Old Testament, we see Gnosticism and the Gnostics interpreting that same information, right? Some of the core teachings include the following: all matter is evil, and the non-material spirit realm is good. Okay, Brother Claudius, thank you for joining us, Brother Claudius, on Facebook. You can join the discussion, brother. All right. There is an unknowable God who gave rise to many lesser spirit beings called aeons. One evil, lower spirit being is the creator who made the universe. Gnosticism does not deal with sin, only ignorance. To achieve salvation, one needs to get in touch with secret knowledge. Secret knowledge. Now that theme, that idea of secret knowledge is one that we see carried out throughout the Bible. Even Jesus Christ speaks about some knowledge that is not accessible to everyone. Jesus Christ speaks about some are not able to digest their system isn't capable of receiving that secret knowledge. So we see that same theme that Jesus spoke about, we see that as a part of Gnosticism. Now, most of what I read today, that is coming out of Wikipedia, and you see the credit given on the screen, the Wikipedia, the Gnosticism. You type it in, go to Wikipedia, type in Essenes, and don't stop at Wikipedia, please. Now, if you type those terms in, just type it, go to Google, type it in, and there are all different kinds of websites that'll have discussions and information. They're scholars for centuries that have studied the Gnostics, that have studied the Essenes, that have studied these things that we're talking about. Serious scholars, theologians. So there's a lot of information out there, and as the book of Thessalonians instructs us, prove all things, and hold fast that which is good. The Nag Hammadi Library. The Nag Hammadi Library, a collection of 13 ancient books called codices containing over 50 texts that was discovered in Upper Egypt in 1945. This immensely important discovery includes a large number of primary Gnostic Gospels. See, we were talking about the Gnostics. Texts once thought to have been entirely destroyed during the early Christian struggle to define orthodoxy. Scriptures such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and the Gospel of Truth. Now, I stopped for a minute to talk about that because earlier I spoke about the development of Christianity, and along with the development of Christianity was the development of the Bible. So at some point in the development of Christianity, the church leaders had to come together and come to an agreement as to what was going to be in the official Bible. There were a whole lot of like little magazines, little books floating around out there. And the church leaders had to come together and decide, well, this one's going to be part of the official Bible, this one's not. And we even see in the Bible, that's the official Bible, we see references to other books that didn't make it to the official Bible. We see references to books like the Book of Enoch. The official Bible talks about the Book of Enoch, but is not in the official Bible. And as you see here, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Truth, those are some of the Gospels that were in the Nag Hammadi Library. Now, this is the codices that were found. And it's another interesting story about how they were found. But they were found in the desert. And when we look here, and you see the map right here, that's Nag Hammadi. And up at the upper right-hand corner, we see Jordan, we see Israel, we see the Dead Sea. Okay, that was Qumran, the Essenes. And now we come across the peninsula, come out to Egypt, which is on the African continent, and come down here, Nag Hammadi, right off the Nile River. That's where the Nag Hammadi Library was found. Okay, so we've covered a lot of materials tonight. We're not going to get into our words of inspiration because we only have maybe about 2 minutes left in the show. So, you know, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when we started this series, when we started this study group, I made the statement that it's important to know the history of your family. And Christianity is a family. It's a family. And no matter what branch of Christianity it is, whether it's the African American Catholic congregation, whether it's the Roman Catholic congregation, whether it's the Protestant congregation, the Methodists, the Episcopals, no matter what, there's a similarity that all of those different denominations consider themselves to be Christian. And the more you know about what Christianity is, how it developed, where it came from, the deeper you can grow in your faith. Because if you start hearing some things about your family and it starts shaking your belief in your family, then that means your faith wasn't very strong. But when you start finding out about your family and your faith in your family and love for your family grows, that's when you stood the test. As we close out tonight, we're going to pick up next week where we left off, studying about the history of Christianity. And Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, all of those other isms, all of that comes back to the source, comes back to the beginning, and the beginning is the same as it is today, and that is that there's an almighty being of which we are all part of the one, that unity, that all in all, that I am. And that I am is indeed almighty. In this upcoming week, no matter what you have to go through, may God Almighty bless you and yours with peace.